You've probably heard of Jedi mind tricks from Star Wars, but what if I told you those abilities are real and the governments of the world have researched them? In 1974, a British newspaper reported that the research into telepathy taking place in Britain is minuscule in comparison with that in Russia, where more than 12 million pounds a year is being spent. Their findings seem literally out of this world. Under the most stringent laboratory conditions, they have trained sensitive people to transmit thoughts, moods, and pictures to each other over a distance of 400 miles. You're telling me the Soviets figured out how I can watch TV in my head without having to implant a Neuralink chip, and I never got to hear about it? If that wasn't mind-blowing enough, that report just scratched the surface of what the Soviets were up to, because I found a 28-page document saved in the CIA archives with all the top Soviet institutes, laboratories, and centers performing research on unconventional biophysics, parapsychology, and psychophysicology as far back as 1920 up to 1974. Whatever that word salad means to them, the descriptions of their research were incredible. Psychokinesis, force fields, psychics, plants having memory and emotions, telepathy, electromagnetic fields, information transmission, subliminal perception, ESP with dogs, which I just did a show about, and a whole lot more. The most shocking part is that this one document was just an overview of the categories the Soviets were researching. So I wanted to dive deeper into exactly what kind of experiments they'd secretly conducted, and what I uncovered could have a huge impact on the world if everyone knew about it. The secrets of ESP research run deep when it comes to international mind wars. Join me, Rob Counts, for a metaphysical show that's going to be out of this world. A quick reminder to like and subscribe to the Metaphysical channel to make sure you don't miss out on any updates or content drops. All your support lets us keep making this content, so thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Now, in my episode on telepathy and mind reading are real, I hunted down reports that the US was conducting mind reading experiments aboard the Nautilus submarine. Well, when the Soviets heard what the US was doing, it ramped up competition between the two nations. Dr. L.L. Vasiliev was one of the leading Soviet parapsychologists who'd been secretly looking into telepathy for decades. So when the news about the Nautilus came out, Vasiliev couldn't hold his tongue. In 1960, when addressing a group of top Soviet scientists, he reportedly said, quote, "We carried out extensive and until now completely unreported investigations under the Stalin regime. Today, the American Navy is testing telepathy on their atomic submarines. Soviet scientists conducted a great many successful telepathy tests over a quarter of a century ago. It's urgent that we throw off our prejudices. We must again plunge into the exploration of this vital field," unquote. Wait, why was it so hush-hush? What prejudices was he talking about? Well, in the West, people make fun of you or your credibility is shot like character assassination if they hear you're into parapsychology. But in the East, the commies would purge you for studying it. Yeah, actual murder. The US Army Captain Michael Zarbo wrote in his thesis that because Marxist philosophy claimed that history was determined by material reality, Stalin, a staunch opponent of anomalous study, considered scientists who dabbled in it as heretics. Their penalty was either death by firing squad or a one-way ticket to Siberia. So imagine this, you're a scientist in the Soviet Union, your entire life is devoted to figuring out the mysteries of the human body and the universe, and the government is telling you that you can't even research it? Well, I mean, what would you do? Well, you'd probably go underground, find your own funding, open up a secret lab, and hide from the world, and hopefully not get dragged out and flayed later for disobeying the commie leadership.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
But hang on, there's way more to this than a few secret labs. This cracked open the truth about an entire underground network of mind studies going on around the globe. On the surface, condemning something as illegal, superstitious, or foolish gets the public to turn away from it. But it's also a convenient way for those in power to study anything they want without public scrutiny, like mind weaponry. I mean, if telepathic communication were actually possible, then how about remotely influencing someone from a distance for war purposes too? In 1970, a woman from Leningrad named Nina Kulagina demonstrated her ability to mentally stop a frog's heartbeat in 40 seconds. A cardiogram was linked to the frog's heart, which was separated from its body in a container of saline solution. At the exact moment Nina did her mental trick, a sudden burst of electric energy resembling the impact of an electric shock happened, and the frog's heart stopped. immediately. In front of medical professionals, including Western observers, Nina also demonstrated abilities in telekinesis. She could also induce skin burns on the arms of people she simply touched. But that's a story for another episode. If you think it all sounds crazy, then why did the CIA redact the paragraph after this story started getting good? There was clearly more to this. As Captain Zarbo put it in his thesis, we've all heard the phrase, if looks could kill, but what if thoughts could kill, like the Soviets demonstrated with this heart-stopping technique? The potential military applications would revolutionize warfare. That's pretty concerning, and others who learned the truth thought so as well. One concern the US military had was what the heck would happen with the breakup of the Soviet Union. People were worried about the Soviet nuclear arsenal being sold off or scattered to third world nations. So then even more countries would have the power to instigate nuclear war. With the secret weapons of telepathy, remote influencing, and remote viewing in the Soviets' arsenal too, if that information were also shared with other countries after the Soviet Union broke up, then that could also affect the entire world. I mean, a mind war. That is scary stuff. Of course, the stakes were high, and Russia wasn't the only big nation out there interested in this stuff. The Chinese were facing a similar problem to the Soviets, where on the surface, anything not materialistic or atheist was being denounced as fake or dangerous. But Chinese mind research was uncovering some incredible things the Westerners didn't know about yet. Okay, so check out what I found. There was a cultural revolution in the 60s and the 70s in China, where so-called old traditions and values were destroyed. You might know about this. This included hunting down and purging academics or those criticizing the Chinese Communist Party. Well, why does that matter with ESP research, though? Around 1980, when interest in exceptional human functions started taking off, the country's leadership started targeting that too. Why was ESP interest taking off anyway, though? If you can believe this, in China, there was a boom of children demonstrating psychic and telepathic abilities. So obviously, quite a few researchers were very interested in why the heck this was happening, what energy or qi was, and why qigong was proving to be so good for the mind and body. Wouldn't you want to know, too, if you saw this boom all around you? That's when things turned secretive, because they had to. The vice chairman of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and vice director of the Institute of Marxism-Leninism and Thoughts of Mao Zedong attacked parapsychology in the press. Man, anyone who needs that many titles to his name must have some sort of serious complex. He called ESP research nonsense and superstition, and specifically targeted the publisher of Nature Journal, who was trying to create an environment of sharing research with the United States. A lot of Psi researchers faded away around this time, but some also continued in secret, and some of their research made it out of China. In fact, what they found affected everything from telepathy research around the world to space exploration. Get this, Chinese employees of Nature Journal reported that an unusual number of children were observed emitting infrared radiation, unusual brain waves, and magnetic signals. During telepathic and remote viewing experiments, these same children said that they would get a flash of a target image in their forehead before they scored hits in these tests. Now, scoring a hit meant they'd gotten it right or read the experimenter's mind as opposed to a miss. So when they were being tested on their ESP abilities, they'd somehow see an image of the answer in their mind's eye or pineal gland in their foreheads. That's pretty amazing. Some children could read with their skin, see through objects, and hear people's thoughts. Meanwhile, all across China, adults too were starting to do Qigong energy practices that were healing their bodies and calming their minds. You've probably seen people doing what looks like slow Tai Chi movements in the park, even over in the United States. The governments later realized these people weren't just exercising, because when you're also elevating your mind at the same time you're working on your body, sometimes it opens up abilities you never knew you had. So apparently mind reading was a universal phenomenon, and back in the US, the CIA thought it was important enough to save this information in their archive. And this was leading to some big things internationally. We know the Soviets and the Americans were studying telepathic communication between land and submarines. But check out what I found. Secretly, the Chinese were studying telepathic communication with astronauts in space, even incorporating Qigong into their astronauts training program. This is a big deal. In fact, this research could benefit all of humanity, because how different are submarines in the ocean from spaceships in the cosmos? In the early 60s, a group of British scientists decided to cooperate with the Russians in a series of long-range telepathy experiments in the hopes of benefiting both nations. Why? It looks like international cooperation wasn't completely the heart of the British interest here. According to a newspaper in 1963, quote, "This interest dates almost precisely from the moment when a Soviet rocket expert suggested to scientists they might contact American spacecraft and presumably influence American cosmonauts by means of telepathy. Since that time, the Soviet government has been pouring money into research into ESP," unquote. So of course, instead of coming together in the international mind wars, the countries chose to head towards Star Wars instead. The CCP even turned against its own people. In 1999, they banned the public from doing certain Qigong practices like Falun Gong. The CCP threw practitioners into prison, burned books, and even started to do live organ harvesting of these people who were basing their lives on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. As of 2024, that persecution is still going on to this day. You risked your life by conducting ESP research over in the Soviet Union, and in China, you also risked your life just by meditating. Why is the truth such a threat? Now, I have to make a funny side note here that's actually related to this mind topic. Did you know that the CCP hates Richard Gere? Now, he's spoken out about the occupation of Tibet, the CCP's many human rights violations, and he's defended the Dalai Lama. But I'm bringing this up because Richard Gere has also spoken about how maybe thoughts can have a positive effect on China.
I was really struck by this idea that there were 1 billion people watching this thing. It's astonishing, 1 billion people. And it is in fact being seen in China right now. And the first thought that came to me was, I wonder if Deng Xiaoping is actually watching this right now. And with the knowledge that what a horrendous human rights situation there is in China, not only towards their own people, but to Tibet as well. If something miraculous and really kind of movie-like could happen here, where we could all kind of send love and truth and kind of sanity to Deng Xiaoping right now in Beijing, that he will take his troops and take the Chinese away from Tibet and allow these people to live as free, independent people again. Thought. We send this thought. Send this thought out. Send this thought.
Now you may be asking, well, Rob, what do you think? I mean, hey, maybe someone's behavior really can be modified if you send them positive thoughts. Of course, a lot of military focus is on technology now and weaponry, but there really is so much more than that. Just take the plant research that's been conducted by Cleve Baxter, where he found that plants have emotions and respond to your thoughts. Or take the water experiments done by Masaru Emoto, who demonstrated how different thoughts directed at water particles would actually change the physical nature of those particles. Aren't we mostly made up of water too? What happens when you shoot good or bad thoughts at us? A Polish researcher, Dr. Stefan Mencharski, predicted that the field of telepathy would open new avenues for propaganda. I mean, what if telepathy could be amplified like radio waves? Would subliminal techniques not just be used on an embassy or a president, but also in our nuclear missile silos or the people of the world? The doctor suggested that the subliminal messages could be carried by television signals or by telepathic means. Pretty scary stuff. In the Soviet Union, ESP was condemned in the press for darkening the mind of the toilers and fostering a thoroughly rotten bourgeois ideology by trying to prove that telepathy is possible. But isn't it awfully convenient to blame those researching telepathy and parapsychology as being the oppressors of society? Yeah, right. So that's what makes it dangerous, looking into cool stuff? Pretty convenient way to cover up some deeper truths, isn't it? But what if the quiet thoughts we were carrying in our minds affect the outside world and have an even greater effect than that? There's a common phrase, fake it till you make it. If you want to change the things around you or get a better job or change things from negative to positive, you just start acting that way. And the exercise of acting that way oftentimes ends up turning those situations around. You can try to change your own mind and convince yourself of something enough that those things actually do change. So the next time you feel like you're in a hopeless situation, try it and see what happens. Maybe, just maybe, your mind is more powerful than the situation around you. In fact, after this episode, I think we can confirm that it is. I'd say that with all this secret mind research over the decades, the governments of the world know the effect this has, and it's up to us to decide to use it. But what do you think? Have you ever experienced telepathy or done something impossible you shouldn't be able to do? Let me know in the comments because we love hearing your stories. If you like this episode and you want more, please consider supporting our work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv. With your help, I can make more videos, more merch, which I designed myself, by the way. Go check those out. We also have really cool episodes on proof of Vimanas, strange anomalies of Maya history, the hardest things to remote view, and ancient sites that warn of cataclysms. You can access all of those at themetaphysical.tv. You can also get a bag of delicious metaphysical coffee every month if you want your mornings to be interstellar. Just remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow as well. And if you want to hear longer conversational episodes right on YouTube, our Metaphysical podcast has you covered. With that, I hope you thought this episode was out of this world.